Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'm Juana, a managing partner and a senior software tester in Altum. I've been working as a software tester, test manager, project manager on a variety of projects for over 15 years. My focus lately was or has been on internal learning programs that we have in Altum, and also teaching and developing content on software testing topics as a BBST instructor. Okay, so I have today here with me 3 of my colleagues that will be speakers in this session. So let me introduce each of them. Denisa, she has been working in software testing field for over 6 years on various projects. She's most excited about test automation, where she gets to use her coding skills and receive fast feedback. Currently, she's working as a software tester at Altum, using her BBST knowledge to improve her results. Welcome, Denisa.
Hi, everyone.
Next one is Raluca. She's a software tester at Altum also, and a BBST graduate with over 80 years of experience in this field. She's passionate about technology and eager to develop great products. She's always looking to improve her skills, either through various project contexts or testing meetings and testing conferences. So welcome, Raluca, to this webinar.
Hi, hello.
And last but not least, Ru. She's a senior test consultant and managing partner at Altum. With over 17 years of experience, she believes that all testing is exploratory and applies this mindset to complex testing challenges and when building test automation frameworks. Welcome, Ru.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so now that we are sure that everyone has the mic on and we can hear each other, let's proceed. So, all 4 of us have been working in projects using Agile approach for many years now, and we've identified several challenges that are bug related. We want to discuss 2 of them in this session, so they are related. The first one is about bugs stuck in the backlog because they are not exactly related to the acceptance criteria, or because they are in the category of hard to reproduce bugs. As a consequence of having these bug stacks in backlog, we also see bugs that are or tests that are skipped in automation because of these bugs. So we will also address this challenge when we have tests that fail, and we already know that there are bugs from the first run, and we know that there are no plans to be fixed in the current release, and we skip the tests. So this is the second challenge. My first question for all the participants, for all the attendees to this webinar, is if you have encountered these 2 issues in your day-to-day work, in your projects. Also, if you have encountered other issues than the ones that I mentioned, related to bugs and bug investigation and bug fixing. If you have encountered them, please type them in the chat. Both if you encountered the 2 issues that we mentioned, or if you have additional issues that we don't approach today. Also, if you have any questions, we would like to see them in the Q&A section. You have in Zoom a Q&A section. We will have in the second part of the webinar, or the last part of the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session. So we will try to address all of your questions. Okay. Some people that work in Agile projects tell me that they don't need bug investigation skills, and they go directly to their colleagues and team members and discuss with them the issues they find, and they get fixed. But the very fact that I keep seeing these 2 challenges that I mentioned shows that bug investigation and bug advocacy are important in Agile and when doing test automation. So how should we tackle these two challenges? That's the question. But let's start with our mission when we investigate bugs. According to CAM, our mission is to get the right bugs fixed. We won't be able to fix all the bugs unless we do a poor job designing tests and testing, and we only find just a few bugs. So the focus is to get the relevant information in our bug reports so that the team can make the right decision on what bugs are more important for the release or for the product and which are less important. To do this, CAM proposes a framework. It's called RINGAM, and he proposed it as part of the bug advocacy course. Let's discuss a bit what is RINGAM and how can it help us. It is a guide for investigating bugs and describing them. The acronym stands from the 6 steps to help you investigate and communicate the bug better. So it's replicate, isolate, maximize, generalize, and neutral tone. We will take each step from RINGAM. I won't give you a definition for each step now, but we will explain each of them throughout the webinar and show you through examples how they can be applied in real life projects. Okay, so I will start with replicate. Most testers do this step. They try to replicate the bugs they find while they're trying to note down the details of the issue in a ticket in a bug tracking system. So this is one step that is most often done from the 6 steps that CAM proposes. But what do you do when you can't replicate the bug, even if you go through the steps that you initially thought that are relevant? There are many reasons why a bug might be hard to reproduce. Either we are unaware by the input conditions or some of the input conditions, or maybe you miss some of the output conditions that could trigger the unwanted behavior. But what happens with these bugs on your project? So that's one question. Another one is, do you log them into a bug tracking system at all? Do you mention that they are irreproducible or hard to reproduce? Do they linger in the backlog for months, or they are closed and forgotten? I would be curious actually to know what's your situation with hard to reproduce bugs. What do you see in your work or in your project? I want to talk about an example from a project that I've worked on about a hard to reproduce bug. So the application that I tested was measuring the internet connection quality for both WAN and mobile data. And one of the client representatives had an issue with the app and reported it to us. The app froze twice while he was driving on the highway, and when he used the option of repeat measurements. Repeat measurements means that the measurements will be done over and over, depending on the number of times we configured in the application. Unfortunately, the debug data in the Firebase was not enough to get to the root cause. When attempting to reproduce it, we couldn't see the problem the client representative described. So this is an example of a hard to reproduce bug, and the team needed a way to get more information about the bug and try to get to the root cause and hopefully reproduce it. So what I did is I created a list with the dimensions I identified where I could vary the input. So I thought, okay, what are the input conditions that may be relevant? So I thought of like how measurement repeats, how many times I configure the app to repeat the measurements. I thought of connection type, maybe technology for the mobile data, like it's 3G, 4G, and so on. Maybe IP version matters, or location sharing, maybe waiting time between repeats, and so on. Then my colleague and I tested with different values for all these variables, with varying one at a time, so not all of them at once. My colleague actually managed to reproduce the issue once, and we were able to get some server logs, some information that gave us additional clues. In this example that I'm providing, we couldn't find the exact reproduction steps, the exact variation that triggers the bug, but we still got valuable info. So looking back, I think that we missed some of the input conditions that could have reproduced the issue. So sometimes that's one of the reasons for reproducible bugs. Like maybe we don't identify the input condition or the output ones. One additional info that I got from running the test is some statistics. We ran about 2,000 measurements, and we reproduced the bug once. Sometimes understanding how often it shows up while using the application can be a good information for fixing a decision. Remember, you want to have the right bugs fixed. In our case, because the bug came from a client representative, one of the stakeholders, not an end user, the decision was to invest time to have it fixed. But it is possible that in other projects, like looking at this like number of measurements, maybe the decision could have been, okay, it's just very few situations that we can reproduce this issue, so maybe it's not worth the time. My takeaways from this example is that it's important to vary the test data and configuration, and to think of as many dimensions as possible, because some of them may matter or may point to the critical condition. And when you manage to reproduce, if you manage to do it at least once, collect as much information as possible when server logs, client logs, video recordings, statistics, anything that can help you understand better and maybe replicate the issue later. I will use the same example to discuss about the next step, isolate. Because there is one additional thing that I've learned from our tests, is that driving at high speed was not a necessary condition to replicate the bug. So we reproduced the bug in the office with a stationary device on our desk. Also, we reproduced the bug that one time with a different device model than the one reported by the client. So this brings us to, this gives us more information about what isolating means according to Ringen. So we want to, when we isolate a bug, we want to have the minimum steps to replicate the bug. If we don't need to drive the car on a highway, then we should not add that as a relevant step. Because, for example, a bug may seem unapproachable to team members if they need to drive to do that step, to drive on a highway. So when we identify the steps, then the next question is this step truly needed? Is it a critical condition? Can I reproduce the bug without this step? Finding the minimum necessary step to reproduce a bug is important if you want to have the bugs fixed. But But also, while running the 2,000 measurements, we found 4 other bugs. We tracked them in separate tickets, in the bug tracking system, instead of cluttering all the details in the same bug. We were working on reproducing one bug but when we found the other 4, we created separate tickets. So that's another thing that we need to consider when isolating the bug, not to clutter and add irrelevant information. So let's get to my key takeaways from this step, from my example. So minimum necessary steps and critical condition if we can find it. In our case, we couldn't. And separate bug reports for separate failures, which we actually did.
Juana,
yeah.
Before you go to the next one, we have a question specifically for this. Someone's asking, did you not use to evaluate the reproduction rate before trying to reproduce the bug in question?
On that project, I don't think we had up to that point a bug that was so complex that we could not reproduce it, or we couldn't find a way, either me or my teammates. So yeah, that was a very important bug that the client reported. So we really wanted to do all the possible things to get to the root cause. So then we realized when we ran all those tests that there were so many tests to only reproduce it once. Okay, good. Next step that in BrimGan is maximize, and I will hand the mic to Denisa to tell us about her example of how she maximized a bug in her project. Denisa?
Thanks, Juana. Hi again, everyone. Before I get into the actual bug, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the product. So the product that I'm testing is a BI dashboard with reports and charts that display analytics about surveillance cameras and their information like name, time, status, so on and so forth. The underlying system is an ETL, which I skillfully illustrated on this slide. For those of you who don't know what an ETL is, it stands for extract, transform, and load. What it does is basically just extract the information from one or multiple databases or sources. It doesn't have to be databases. It transforms it, uses whatever modules to transform that data, and then loads it into another database. And ultimately, this information is displayed in the form of reports. I implemented some quite simple automated tests, which basically checks source to target accuracy, or simply put, it checks that the data that is ingested from the source reaches the target database without compromising. And if we go over to the next slide, the tests failed with something that seemed minor. So if you take a look at the source database, you will see that there's milliseconds displayed in the timestamp, and the target database doesn't have milliseconds. So when the data reaches the target database, the milliseconds are basically lost. So even though this is something minor, I decided to do some follow-up testing to see if I can find a more serious problem that what I originally wanted to log, or in other words, to maximize it. My strategy was to vary the data by adding multiple cameras with different statuses within the same second. So the only difference would be the milliseconds. Now, how the system works is it looks at the newest timestamp and takes the status from there, which can be connected or disconnected. In this particular situation, the camera should be connected. If you pay attention to the first picture, you'll see that the new time is connected if you look at the milliseconds. But because the target database is missing milliseconds, the camera is basically connected and disconnected at the same time. And since the database doesn't know which one is correct, it just takes the first one, which is disconnected. So now you have an inconsistency. You have the expected to be connected, but the actual is disconnected. If we move over to the next slide, you'll see screenshots from the dashboards. So this is what the client is ultimately going to see. And due to the lack of milliseconds, reiterating that the latest camera status wasn't captured correctly in the target database if it changed within the same second in the source database. So in our example, the status showed offline instead of online on the dashboard. And ultimately, not showing in this situation, not showing the correct status on the report on the dashboard would defy one of the main requirements of this platform. I like to think of maximizing as this plot twist in a movie, if you will, where the seemingly innocent person turns out to be the villain at the end. We've all seen those movies. I feel like maximizing with success is so satisfying because you basically just find this much bigger issue, and because I think it's one of the least approaches you succeed in. A key takeaway, which is a generic takeaway, is you find a more serious problem underlying the one initially found. For me, a more specific takeaway from this particular situation is, since this is a time-consuming approach, you can't always apply it. But I feel like, from experience, it should be considered in complex systems or when you're potentially executing unit tests. And yeah, I'm curious to know if anyone took this approach without even knowing that it has a name. I strongly encourage you to share your experience in the chat. And that concludes maximizing.
Thank you, Denisa. We will have Raluca next that will tell us her example about Generalize.
So, yes, Raluca? I'll take over. Yeah, thank you. I have chosen, I think, an easy example to present. So firstly, I would like to share a bit about the context of the product under test. It's about the API used to create some data and also consuming big amounts of it. And that data comes actually from different sources. As you can see here in this request, as input, there are a few properties, among which we have protocol and an address of another API, which is here access point. The scope was to test an endpoint that was implemented for fetching data in a standardized way. And that data, that endpoint used the data setup that we have here to create in this slide. So I tried to execute the request for consuming data with this kind of values, used protocol HTTPS and the connector URL, and I got the status code 500 for the response. So firstly, I thought that the issue was around the specific URL I used there in the access point, but then I performed some more tests in order to learn more about the conditions and the behavior. So I tried with the same access point value and a different protocol, and this was a success. Then I tried with HTTP protocol and the same connector, and this was also a success. So when I tried another thing with the HTTPS protocol and a different connector URL, I got again the 500 error. So it was clear at this point that the issue was around the protocol having this value, and any connector URL used with this protocol would reproduce the bug. So basically the severity is higher compared with what I firstly considered. And this new information learned was relevant for the product owner, because he raised the priority for fixing this bug, because he understood that the problem is more general than, and the fact that it's not limited to one particular connector. To summarize key takeaways, now I decided to use the Generalize step because it refers to checking if the problem found affects more people in more ways than originally you can consider. And basically this is about doing the uncorner a corner case, basically, because you use only one variable. But when you try with more values, you can see it's reproducible. And it shows that it fails on a broad range of systems and configurations, connectors, and so on. So this was my example.
Okay, thank you, Raluca.
Step.
Thank you. So we have one more example, this time from Ru. Ru, can you tell us what happened when you tried to externalize, or what's your example on the externalize step from Ringen?
So yeah, my example is going to be a bit less fortunate than my colleague's example, because they actually did go through the Ringen steps and improve the original bug and probably got them unstuck from where they would have been stuck in the backlog. In my case, I didn't do that. So my example is going to be one of learning from my mistakes, or telling you about what I should have done. My example is from a project. I was testing a mobile app, and the users were supposed to sign up in the app, and the feature that we were implementing was that we were adding email confirmation. One, if you switch the slide. So users, basically, it was a very simple, very clear, well-defined feature. When you signed up, you would enter your email address. At that point, during the sign-up process, you would actually receive an email that would tell you, click on this link to confirm your email address. When you clicked on it, you'd be taken to a page that would say, thank you, your address is now confirmed. Then you could go back to the app and continue the sign-up process and use the account. Typical Agile process, we had good acceptance criteria. We even said that if the user clicked on the same link later on after confirming the account, it would actually just say that the link was no longer valid. One, if you switch the slide. Very simple. I tested this first as a part of the feature testing, and then we had automated tests for this, so that we could use always new accounts in our tests. So part of the automation was that we would also use a new email address every time, confirm it, and then use it for the rest of the test. During the testing, I realized, I noticed at some point that when I clicked on this link the first time, I got the message saying that the link is no longer valid, even though I was convinced that I hadn't yet clicked on the link before receiving the email. First, I thought maybe it was a mistake, but it reproduced a few times. I logged it. I did try to replicate it and isolate it. So I did go through some of the steps from the Ringen framework. After some investigation, we realized with the team that it was related somehow to certain email addresses, and the assumption was that some of them were using a spam filter of some sort that would scan the emails, and during the scan they would also visit the link. So because a bot had visited it, when I tried, or the automation tried to visit it again, it would say that it's no longer valid. So we had very good information about the bug, but we still considered it quite minor, because the confirmation had worked, so the users could continue, and it wasn't really a blocking problem in any way. It's one of those examples where, because it was also happening with some of the automated tests, or every now and then, I removed the check for the text here. So in the test, I would just visit the link and not check anymore what it said, whether the email was confirmed or the link was no longer valid, because I thought it doesn't matter anyway. Once I visit it once, for sure, I can continue with the sign up process in the tests. So yeah, we eventually, of course, had other features. We eventually released the new version of the app, and we very soon after that started getting a lot of customer support tickets. We were surprised by the amount of tickets we got. A lot of people complaining that they cannot confirm their email address, and they would say that they get the email, and then when they try to confirm it, it says that the link is no longer valid and they cannot go through. So there were two things besides the first thing was that the amount of people that contacted us, that surprised us. And then the second thing that surprised us was, why were they stuck? We immediately recognized, it's that bug. we knew exactly which one it was, but we didn't understand why couldn't they continue with the sign up. And we checked in the backend, and of course the email addresses were confirmed, the accounts were created, so they could have just used the account normally. But the problem was that this simple text that I was ignoring in my test automation was exactly the thing that was confusing for users, and that was actually making them feel stuck, even though in reality they were not stuck. So simply because it said that the link is no longer valid, they didn't go back to try, has my account been confirmed in any way? This is where I think in my bug investigation, I should have gone further and tried a few more follow-up tests and tried to understand the impact that this seemingly minor bug had. So eventually the fix that we had was very, very simple. We simply changed this text here to say, instead of the link is no longer valid, we said something like, okay, your account is already confirmed. Your email address is already validated. I think I have another slide for that one if you change it. So this is kind of like a sign to me that when I ignore something in a test automation, if it's important enough to be a step in the test automation process, then maybe it's worth the time to investigate it further and not ignore it, but try to understand whether it needs to be kind of either maximized, externalized, or understood a bit better. Externalizing in terms of takeaways is really about trying to think of who would be affected by this bug. And if you switch the slide, it's a bit strange to not be in control of the slides. So one thing is to think about who will be affected by it, and I didn't think about how many people would be. And in this case, there were so many email addresses because a lot of our customers were using their work email address, and corporate mailboxes are often have spam filters and constantly monitor emails that come unrequested that have a URL in it, and the URL is visited. So this was actually a very, very common thing. So I didn't think about how often this would happen to actual users, and then I didn't think about the impact, or how would they read that message that we thought was okay, not that important, or was not at all blocking the sign up flow. So in terms of the Rimgen framework, this is one of those steps. I think externalize, maximize, and generalize are things that you try to do, but not always succeed, while replicating and isolating are the two that you kind of always do. And this kind of takes us to the last letter in the acronym, the N from Rimgen. Using a neutral tone is again something that we try to do all the time, and I think it's just as a reminder that the way we phrase the bugs have an impact on how they are perceived and treated from there on. I think in my case, I did use a good enough tone. I wasn't, I had the right, I was focused on the facts. But one thing that I think I did was I instantly said that this is a minor thing. So I don't think it was even looked at by the PL with the attention that maybe other bugs would have gotten if I insisted on its possible impact. The opposite thing to do is also a bad thing. Like a lot of like you hear a lot of times of that one tester that always exaggerates the impact of a bug, and if you do that with all of your problems, you might actually end up your team members might think that you are just crying wolf, and you actually have a really important problem that you're trying to get their attention to, because you always over exaggerate the severity of bugs. So this is one part of the neutral tone, but the other part is whether you're reporting in Jira or in a bug tracking database, or whether you're talking to your colleague and reporting the problem that you've seen. The way you phrase your description of the bug can have a huge impact on how the bug is received. And the idea here is to try to always focus on the problem, not on the person. Never make it, oh, it's that developer that always makes these mistakes, and it's such a simple thing that he should have seen when he was testing himself. Never make it into something that can be interpreted as antagonistic or put blame on someone versus the other, and try to keep kind of, it's also not meant to be understood as a tester. You don't have an opinion, or you don't get to maybe suggest what's a severe bug or not. But the idea is to just respect everyone else's expertise and come up with the best information that you can that helps us fix. And again, the idea is to fix not all of the bugs, not only the important bugs, but all of the bugs that matter, the right ones on a project. Juana, I think that was my example, so you can take it from here.
Thank you, Ru. Sorry for having the delay in changing the slides. I was also reading the chat with the questions. So yeah, we will anyway soon get to them and try to answer. There is one thing that I want to highlight until we get to the question, is that building a skill means practicing and getting feedback and practicing again and incorporating feedback. So it's not enough just to read about something or about Ringen. That's why we recommend for those who want to master the bug advocacy ability, and those who see the value in perfecting or like working on the skill, to take the bug advocacy class when they have time, because there you can find way more guiding and the tips on how to apply each of these Ringen steps. And yeah, it's the course offers a context in which everyone can actually practice these steps several times. So I put here a link to the course if you want to read more, and also put on this slide a link to the Ringen framework and the cards. One of our colleagues actually drew the images that you've seen for each of the letters, and yeah, if you want to download them, you can just access the link, and there you can also find information like in short, like summarize information about Ringen steps. One other thing that I want to highlight is that Ringen is a guide. So we may not be able to go through each of the steps all the time. So some steps may not be applicable or may not be relevant for our product, our, I don't know, project. Some steps like replicate, they are like mandatory. So if you can't replicate something, if you don't try, then you need to revise to get back to that step and do it each time, because it's important to have to put in a bug tracking system this information. Can you replicate it or not? But again, like my colleague said, maximizing it may not be the case, or externalizing if the system maybe it's not meant to be used by many people, or it's, I don't know, it's you have access to like to the people that will use the product, and you can train them and to use the product in a specific way, then maybe it's not a priority to go through the externalize. Anyways, I think that there were quite some questions, so I think it's a good idea to get to the Q&A part, and I will open here. So I think some of the questions were on the chat and some of the questions were in the Q&A. Denisa and Ralu already answered some.
We could also take those while we get some new ones in.
Yeah. So let's start.
Like actually discuss those.
Do you want to address this question? How do you choose the Ringen? Do you want to answer this one? How do you choose the Ringen step? Do you just, the question is just to make sure everyone knows the question. So the question is, how do you choose the Ringen step? Do you just go through the whole framework in any context?
I think I kind of touched a bit on this. At least my approach is, of course, I always try to replicate the bug, and when I replicate it, I try to find the smallest amount of steps. So I try to isolate it and find the critical condition. I think someone referred to the root cause analysis. I think of the root cause analysis more in terms of isolating where exactly the problem is. So those are two steps that I for sure always do, and the same, I always try to use this neutral tone. The generalize, maximize, and externalize are kind of like heuristics, let's say. It's things that I think about when I find a bug, especially if it's one that's maybe in Agile, not directly against the acceptance criteria. It's one of those things that we say, yeah, it's a bug, let's put it in the backlog. How can we make it bigger than it initially seems? And bigger might be more powerful by maximizing it, more general, like covering, okay, it's not just a corner case. Generalizing, I remember that as uncornering your corner case. You take it out of the corner and make it more widely happening, or by externalizing and trying to focus on the impact it has on the customers and show how that's bigger than initially thought, maybe.
Yeah, I want to add one thing to this. So I think it's important to understand when we say to make it, to put it into a stronger light, or to make it stronger, it's important to be honest. So not, as Ru was mentioning, not to over exaggerate, because your credibility will go down if you keep saying something is like has more of an impact on the user than it actually has. So we need to be honest about all these like maximizing and generalizing. So that's important thing to mention. Good. So I hope I answered actually we answered the question. And there is one more question. Somebody asks you, Ru, if you can sum up the neutral tone approach once more.
Maybe Juana, you want to do that? Maybe I didn't explain it well enough. So if you give it a try as well.
Okay, I'll try. So for me, neutral tone is about focusing on the actual bug and not on the person. Is keeping a professional tone and a professional description without having any hints about any person or any I don't know, any person that contributed to that feature. So it's important to have to think that the better we communicate, the better chances we have that people are willing, or they will take the effort to fix something. So we need to have that in mind when we log a bug. Somebody has to look on the issue and investigate it, and we need to make sure the information is clear, but also it's put there in a way that doesn't trigger any feelings of I don't know, maybe the person gets I don't know, angry or hurt. So that should not happen, to increase the chances of having the bug fixed. So I hope that I managed to give a new perspective to the neutral tone and clarify it a bit. If not, please write us again, and we will try to one more time. Maybe, I don't know, Denisa or Raluca maybe will try to summarize neutral tone.
Reading the comments while we're waiting for more questions, I think I may have suggested that you're not supposed to set a severity to the bug when I was explaining the neutral tone, and that's really not what I meant. If I said that, then of course a lot of the time the testers are the ones that understand the severity of a bug. Priority is a different thing, and that can be set whether it's by the product owner or in a discussion with people that have all the right information. But if I said that, then I guess that was not my intention.
Yeah, so I think what I understood from what you said in the neutral tone is that okay, you said that it was minor thing and that maybe that didn't help. But what's not a neutral tone is to over exaggerate all the time about the importance just to get all the bugs fixed. So yeah, there are maybe some testers, maybe even probably, or some of them at the beginning of their career that really are putting a lot of effort in investigating, and they really want to have all the bugs fixed. But if they keep pointing out that everything is very important, like we had a colleague that was assigning priority 1 to all the tasks, and at one point everything seemed to be priority 1. So then that's not a neutral tone. Everything seems to be exaggerated and like more severe than it's supposed to, or it's not honest. Okay, so yeah, so somebody had a comment about that the spam filters can validate me for spam sites. So that was funny. So yeah, that's funny remark and an interesting phenomenon. Yeah.
Regarding to that, eventually our final fix for that problem was to also, and I think a lot of other products do that already, not just to say that the email was confirmed, but to introduce an extra step. So you visit the page and say confirm. There's an extra action needed for you to actually confirm the email address. So eventually we implemented a proper fix for that. Okay, we have 2 more questions.
Okay, so let's take the first one. Ru, do you want to answer? Should I answer? Now reading it. Let's read it first live.
To read it for everyone, this is from Maret. It's a very interesting question. If you want to pair with devs on the fixes instead of reporting, which of the steps would you recommend done together in pair, or and what to do before going into pairing?
Yeah, that's a very good question.
Who wants to take that?
Maybe we can do it together, each of us, if no one jumps. Okay, so I'm thinking that if I want to, for example, isolate something or understand a critical condition, I think it would be easier to do in a pairing session with the programmer, with the developer. I think that sometimes because they know very well the code, they may get to the root cause faster. But if I want to externalize, I need to do some additional research, and maybe like doing the pairing. I'm thinking maybe it's not going to help me that much. I need to find some sources. For example, in your example, Ru, you mentioned that you got a lot of tickets, and if something is unclear, so I may take a look at what clients we have and how they react when something's not clear. Do they call us? Do they chat? Do they post something in a I don't know, in a channel? So I would want to investigate that separately and discuss with people from like customer support on externalizing. I think that externalizing is more about understanding client needs rather than what the code's supposed to do and what's happening. So that's my view on this. Anyone, any other comments on maybe other steps like maximizing or generalizing?
For me, sometimes I think, of course, yeah, for maximizing and generalizing, I think you need to have a hunch before you think, oh, this might be a bigger problem. So sometimes it's a lot easier to do this analysis with a developer that can help you and look like in all the right places with you, as long as you can kind of, if you have a good enough reason to justify the idea of let's look into this a little bit more because it seems like something there is more than what it seems. so to speak. Sometimes I think for isolating, I like to. Sometimes isolating the bug is very easy. It's just a question of, okay, what have I done? 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't need 4. It's 1, 2, 3. You know, so that's kind of, I find that sometimes good to do beforehand if possible, but sometimes it's very difficult to isolate a bug. So I also often, if I have a developer willing to pair, I like to do that with a developer, also because I learn a lot about how the developer would investigate a problem like this, and I can maybe do it better next time myself.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Good. Hopefully, we've answered Marit's question, because it's a good question.
No, it's also, Marit has a good comment that sometimes pairing is a way of externalizing, if you care enough to sit with them on a bug. That's a very good point. Yes.
Good. Let's take another question. So I will read it loud. So is it my responsibility as a tester to say how bad a bug is, or but how do I decide if a bug is right? Oh, okay, so no, it's the other way. So it is my responsibility as a tester to say how bad is a bug, but how do I decide if a bug is right? I will try to answer. So I think that there are two dimensions when we discuss bugs, and which are more important and less important. I think that one dimension is the severity of the bug. As a tester that who investigates the bug and collects information, I think I have an insight into how severe, or I should have an insight into, if I do the proper investigations, into how severe the bug is. So I think that I'm the responsible person to say how bad that bug is. Now, the other dimension is the priority. The priority is something that I don't think it's owned by testers. So I think that it's either the team or the product owner or the client, or there are many, like on different projects, there are different processes or different, I don't know, setups for this, for deciding the priority. But I think that in that case, we want to discuss as a team, or to discuss with the product owner, for example, to understand what's the importance of that bug, and how fast should we, or in which sprint we should include it. Should we include it in the current sprint, or we should leave it for the next ones? And I think that that gives the answer to the like fixing the right bugs, because there will always be bugs, and we need to understand which are more important for us at that point. For us as a team, for us as a company that develops the software, or for us as like the stakeholders. So yeah, so this decision is done, as I was saying, either by the entire team, or by people that take ownership of prioritizing the bugs. Hopefully I answered the question. There is one more thing, one more question. Who wants to address this one?
I guess I can try. Take a or I'll Luca do it first.
Sergio, sorry, I don't know how to spell it. Do you use automation as a way to replicate problems, like making a script to expose the bug, so whoever picks the bugs can have a more explicit way to get started? I think automation is great to use when you want to make a fast execution of some operations, like many operations, or maybe you want to repeat it a lot of times. So that's really annoying for a person to do. So automation is really good at repeating that a lot. And yeah, in my work, I used like Jmeter scripts or Postman collections, which are run in order to set up some data or prepare the system, let's say, for reproducing a bug. And I think that was appreciated by the developers because they were easily be able to reproduce the bug after using this, and they didn't have to start it from scratch.
Do you use automation as a way to replicate problems? I have a comment related to this one. I think that sometimes, for example, because I had the example with irreproducible bug. I think that depending on what are the critical conditions, automation may be a way to trigger the bug. For example, if I remember well, in the case I exemplified, there was a problem with the threading and with counting with a counter. So there were several threads that were starting the testing, and the counter was not counting properly the number of repeats, for example. So sometimes, like when you have these concurrent tasks, or something needs to happen very fast, yeah, you may get a lot of help from automation. But sometimes when you want to reproduce irreproducible bugs, it may be quite expensive to develop something, and possibly with very little results. So I think the automation approach needs to be very well considered before. Like it's not like a silver bullet for all the bugs that we want to reproduce. So yeah, that was my comment. I'm going through the chat again to see if there are any other questions in the chat that we can address. I will try to put also the chat, like to make it to make the pop-up larger to be able to read. Yeah, somebody has a comment. I don't think QA is not supposed to have a say in priority evaluation. Any IT culture should encourage great input on the weight of a bug. So I was saying, this is Victor. So I was saying that as testers, we understand maybe very well what the problem is, and the reproduction steps and the impact. But my question is, do we really understand what's important for a client? Do we understand, for example, the loss they will have in case they don't release something on time and some other competitor comes first with a feature? So there are when you decide which is the priority of having a feature or having a bug fixed, I think that you need to have a good overview. Sorry, I was just like going up, and my head was cut from the screen. So I think that I'm not saying that testers may not have an opinion, but I think that the decision will not be testers only. So I would, as a tester, I would not decide by myself the priority of a bug. I would definitely want to discuss that with the team, with the product owner, with the client, and so on. So I think that's my comment on this comment.
Yeah, and I think what Victor is saying, that it depends on the level of business development involvement, and that he imagines QA should have at least some of that. That's true on some projects. It's not true on others. So it depends on the context that you are in. But and I agree that some testers are very involved in the business development, and that's totally fine. It's just maybe that's not necessarily part of their. Like, does it matter if it's the tester doing it, or does it matter that it happens? There's a discussion about the role and what defines you as a tester, and do you only do testing as a tester? So sometimes it's difficult to yes, as a tester, I might have an input to business development, but is that because I'm a tester, or is that because as a person in my role, I am more involved in business development than some other tester? So I think it's all a matter of degree in some way. I don't think that by nature, by definition, a tester should not be involved in business development decisions. But yeah, I think what I try to think about most in the role of the tester is that I should bring out all the information that might be useful for a business decision, whether it's my own decision or someone else's or the team's or whoever makes that decision.
Any other questions or comments that you want to discuss now? The aspects that you wrote in the chat, we will take a look again and after the webinar, and we will, as I was saying, we will try to address them in another webinar or in a blog post. So if you have any questions strictly related to the examples or to the content or the things that we discussed in this examples, in our examples, or in this webinar, then I think if you add them in the QA, we will QA section, we will address them now.
Yeah, we answered on some questions here in the answered, you can see. So if you want to like read some of them, maybe to go through again.
We also have
live.
a new. We also have a new question from Sergio.
I will read it out loud and see who answers it. So, do you also think on maximize from another perspective, like maximizing potential value? Like when you have a bug and you can already have an idea for providing enhanced value, or you just open the bug and leave that idea for another unrelated process where you would register that somehow. Sometimes we may have bugs that instead of fixing, we could handle in a different way, / feature.
I would think of, I can think of that in this way as well. Sometimes, yeah, I find a bug, but from a maximizing perspective, let's say, or when I think about how this could be maximized, it does kind of turn into a new feature, let's say. That could be, yeah, or I mean, maybe not enhancement, but like a totally new feature that would just bring value to the product. I think again, it depends on the project, how these are handled. I would be totally fine to add this information to the one bug that I've discovered and develop that one in a feature request or whatever we call it, or if there's a specific project process in the project for coming up with new features, then I would go that route and point maybe to the original problem that I've noticed that got me thinking about that.
Okay, so we want more questions. I think that in the chat, the conversation I somehow threaded, so it's pretty hard to take the questions out from there. So that's why I was saying that it's easier for us to have them in the Q&A. For now. So yeah, so let's try. We have another question. Okay, let's answer live. Who wants to answer it?
Okay. Okay, I did the last one, so
yeah.
I can read it. And
yeah.
So the question is, how do I advocate the fixing of a bug that's not in the current sprint?
Okay, so we have the tools, meaning that we have the framework, for example. So if we have a bug that we think it may have an impact, or it may affect lots of people, then we can use that particular steps from Ringen. And if we manage to honestly bring arguments in our bug that this bug will have an impact. I don't know, on like Ru explained, like they had like lots of complaints and people were stuck. Then I think that this bug could actually get in the current sprint. I doubt that anybody who sees like a bug that has a serious impact and is important for the project would be delayed. So if it's truly something that needs to be solved, and if we work on maximizing, externalizing, generalizing, if we take the steps, if it's easy to reproduce, if we isolate it well, and it's clear for the person, for the team member that is going to or can take the task, that is clear what the bug is about, then I think that the chances are considerably increased. Marit has another question. I will read it out loud and see who wants to answer. So I have managed to get to stop and fix for bugs keeping the number 0 a few times now. Do you have experience on that? And would you recommend trying to get there based on your experiences? So I will try to discuss a bit about the project that I also used as an example, and if you can think of other examples on this topic, then I will be happy to hear yours, Denisa, Ralu, and Ru. So in my case, the team was quite small. And I think that also the entire setup was in such a way that the focus was on what's most important for now. So when I noticed that we keep having bugs that get into the backlog and they are not fixed, and the number is going up. I think for example, I discussed this with the team. And the product owner and the Scrum Master suggested, for example, to add some of them as tasks, so we somehow show the relation with a particular feature that my team colleagues were working on. So that was one approach that these projects had to take those bugs and say, okay, let's add them as tasks for a feature to make the relation clear, to make it clear for the entire team. On the other hand, I think that in this case it would have been very hard to target stop and fix, because there were quite a lot of constraints on the project. So I think that in that case would have been maybe too much for the team. So, but I could see the stop and fix strategy work on other projects. So, for example, at one point I worked on a project where again the bugs were piling up, and there we had a lot more flexibility, and like in terms of deadlines and budget and everything. So I think that I even suggested that we need to get together and prioritize and keep putting bugs from the backlog in the current sprint, so that we don't end up with situations like we have obsolete bugs, or we have lots of bugs, and it's very hard to go back, and you don't trust that bug is reproducible anymore. You probably some of them were probably in this situation when you locked a bug, it 1 month or 2 months passed, or several sprints, and then you were asked, can you try again to see if it's still reproducible, because it's like it was logged like a long time ago, and maybe it's not happening anymore, and the programmers didn't want to, or the colleagues didn't want to take the the burden to actually go through a bug and see and not being able to reproduce it. So if I see that kind of a situation, then I definitely don't want to be flexible. And I think that a stop and fix approach would really work in that case, like flexible budget, and to avoid like repeating the work as a tester, like keep going and reproducing. Okay, it's still reproducing, like, okay, maybe you can try to fix in this current sprint. Anyone else?
I was going to say that I don't think I've ever been on a project where we got to zero by doing the stop and fix approach. I've often been on projects where we tried to do a bug fixing only sprint when we realize that there's a big queue of bugs piling up, and we just stop and everyone just does bug fixing. But I don't think I've ever gotten to zero with them. I have been on a project where we tried, it was like early days, small team, and we agreed that the bugs that come out of a feature testing exercise, so we have a new feature, someone implements it, I test it in an exploratory manner. If I log a bug, it's something that is most likely directly related to the feature and should be fixed right away. And if there's other bugs that are not related to the feature, then we should either add them as a task to do, like, okay, this needs to be done, or we don't log them at all if we don't think that that's relevant enough to fix right away. We tried that, but it didn't work. So we were basically not logging bugs, or it was very difficult to kind of stick to the idea that everything is either a feature or not important enough to even log. I think there was it's very difficult to, once you know about a problem, then you can't tie it to a specific feature. You know it's important, you can't do it right now, but you still don't want to say, let's forget about it and never log it. So I haven't been able to not have any bugs in the backlog ever.
Yeah, so I was on a project that had this kind of like stop and fix approach, and it was like in my early days as a tester, and I think it worked up to a point where we actually understood that some of the bugs were fixed in ways that generated some unexpected problems, because like people were really focusing on closing bugs. So I think, if I remember well, it was a long time ago, I actually saw the side effect, but maybe I think it also depends on the team and on the project setup, how things go. But I could definitely see this approach work on some of the projects. There is one more question from Andrea. I think that maybe Denisa, you can answer this. It's
Yep.
It's closer to your example.
So from Andrea Vescan, which is one of my teachers from university. How do you combine automation with Ringen? How often do you use Ringen, then automation, design tests, and run automatically? I usually use Ringen after automated tests or in between. I feel like automated tests are sort of like a starting point of finding issues. Like in my example with maximizing, my automated tests found a big issue early by finding a small issue first. But automation wouldn't be able to maximize by itself. I don't think it's a matter of using Ringen then automation, like more Ringen than automation, like you put it. I think Ringen can be used regardless of what tests you're performing or how you're performing them.
Okay, thank you, Denisa. Okay, so I think we're if you click done on this question, Denisa, then I think we are again with 0 questions in the list. So we are, we managed to get to 0. If there aren't any other questions,
no backlog, like Sergio says.
Okay, so then I guess we can stop, and we will take a look in the chat and see if we can find topics that we can address in future webinars or in blog posts. So thank you, everyone. It was really nice to have that many questions, and I really liked that part at the end where we had like lots of things to discuss about Ringen. So thank you again, and see you in the next webinar. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
And thanks to the panelists, to the speakers. So Denisa, Raluca, and Ru, thanks.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.